for your children to be fed. So you're not crying because they're crying and they can't go to bed. You cannot pray for your medical bills to disappear. You cannot pray for the mold to stop poisoning your children in the classrooms. The other thing that frustrates me is people who have experienced poverty, who have gotten the straps for their bootstraps, who sit and talk about how we shouldn't do anything for the next person. See, as someone who knows severe poverty, I lived in a refugee camp on the floor, no water, nothing. And I hear somebody say here in the United States.
In this emotional moment, Ilhan Omar starts by talking about the struggles of poverty, saying, "You can't pray away hunger or medical bills." Her words hit hard for many who faced real hardship. But this emotional appeal also raises eyebrows, because while Omar paints herself as a victim of the system, critics argue that she's used that sympathy to excuse her controversial behavior in Congress. Her background story connects with people. Yes, but it's her words and actions as a lawmaker that have caused division and outrage across America. This video dives into the big story behind Congressman Chip Roy's reaction to Omar's removal from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. For years, Omar has made statements that many saw as damaging to America's global reputation. Republicans, led by voices like Roy, are saying enough is enough. They believe her removal wasn't about race or religion. It was about restoring accountability and protecting America's credibility on the world stage. This is where the clash between political power and public trust truly begins.
Appreciate the chairman. I do associate myself with remarks of the gentleman from Kentucky, but also the gentleman from South Carolina, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the gentlelady, all the remarks that we've been talking about over here. And I appreciate the spirit of the remarks from the gentleman from Colorado. And would note that we're here for a very obvious reason. The door was opened, and now we're dealing with that. And the door shouldn't have been opened. I'm reminded when I was in the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2005, and Miguel Estrada was being filibustered by the Democrat majority at the time. And we know why. We know this because a memo that said very specifically that he was being filibustered because he was an Hispanic conservative was found, but then shoved aside. We couldn't talk about it because it was found on a server, and they said, we shouldn't get it. There's a whole lot of backstory on that. But there was a lot of drama around that. There were 7 judges being held up: Priscilla Owen, Janice Rogers Brown, because she's black. That was all happening. We just sweep that aside. And you fast forward, and Bill Frist was being pressured to deploy the nuclear option. I remember being part of all those conversations, the Senate lawyer and the Judiciary Committee. Bill Frist decided not to deploy the nuclear option. In 2013, Harry Reid did deploy the nuclear option. 2017.
When Chip Roy took the floor, his tone was clear. This was about fairness and consistency. He reminded everyone that Democrats opened the door to these committee removals when they stripped Marguerite Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar of their roles last term. Now Republicans are simply responding in kind. Roy didn't want this path, but he said it himself. We're not going to unilaterally disarm. In politics, when one side changes the rules, the other side eventually responds. And that's exactly what's happening here. Roy compared the situation to an old-school baseball fight between Nolan Ryan and Robin Ventura, where one player took a hit and finally fought back. It's his way of saying that Republicans are no longer sitting on the sidelines while Democrats take shots. This analogy perfectly captures the mood inside Congress right now. It's about standing your ground even if it means getting a little bruised in the process. Roy's word sent a strong signal. The era of one-sided politics is over.
Then certain things changed at the United States Supreme Court. So now we live in that world. It is what it is. Now here we sit. The door was open. I just went back and reread my speech on the floor because the gentleman, I hadn't done that yet. I went back and reread my speech on the floor. Not stand by every word of that speech. And in it, I referenced the fact that I had just a few months prior had been in agreement with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle with respect to January 6th, which there's disagreements on our side of the aisle on some of that with respect to the votes at the time. And that I'd taken very strong disagreement and sought apology from our colleague on our side of the aisle about some of the remarks that were said, but felt that this was not the right path to go down. I stand by that. So here we sit. I could associate myself and do with all the remarks that gentleman from South Carolina. I have very strong disagreement with a lot of the statements that Representative Omar has made. We've covered most of them. That some people did something is the one that really sticks in my craw pretty strongly. Raises a whole lot of flags for me. I think there are significant amount of justifications to raise issues with respect to service on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but I would not go down this road. But I'm also reminded, in August of 1993, Juan Gonzalez was a batter for the Texas Rangers and was plunked by Alex Fernandez from the White Sox. And just a little bit later, Robin Ventura came.
Roy made it clear that he disagrees with many of Omar's statements, especially her comment about 9/11 being when some people did something. For millions of Americans, that line was deeply offensive. It wasn't just poor phrasing. It symbolized a lack of respect for a national tragedy. That single remark changed how many saw her, and it's one of the reasons Republicans felt she shouldn't represent America in foreign affairs. Accountability, Roy argued, is not punishment, it's protection. The channel's commentary reminds viewers that this is bigger than politics. It's about standing up to the establishment. For years, conservative voices have been silenced or mocked for speaking truth. Now, platforms like this one are fighting back by exposing hypocrisy and defending patriotic values. Omar's removal is just one example of that fight. It's not about silencing anyone. It's about making sure those who represent America do so with integrity and respect for the nation's values.
Came to the plate for the White Sox, and Nolan Ryan was on the mound. And Robin knew what was about to happen. Nolan plunked him. And then Robin Ventura charged the mound, and then Nolan Ryan beat the crud out of him on the mound. That's what happened. We all know that's what happened. Old school baseball. Nolan Ryan defined old school baseball. This is raw politics. That's what this is. When the doors opened, then there's a question, and you have to decide what you're going to do. We're not going to unilaterally disarm. Just not going to do it. I'm tired of that. It just is what it is. Guys took a shot at someone on our team, about statements I disagreed with, and took very much to task. But I've got strong disagreements with Representative Omar. I would prefer, if it were just starting from scratch, I would not choose this path. I'd just say whatever stuff you all want to say. We'll say whatever stuff we want to say. Our managers will pick our team. Let's go battle it out in committee. That's what I would say. I would say that's the right place to be. But at this point in time, it is my considered judgment that, like Nolan Ryan, we've got to respond. And I'm just going to be blunt and honest about it. That's just my belief. I think it's important. And I hope we'll get through this. We'll kind of hip check each other. Maybe we can sit down.
Ilhan Omar's record has long been controversial. She's made remarks that critics say downplay terrorism, insult allies like Israel, and show sympathy for America's adversaries. Her "some people did something" line about 9/11 was seen as dismissive, and her repeated questioning of U.S. alliances made many wonder where her loyalty truly lies. When you hold a position that affects foreign relations, words matter, and Republicans decided that those words finally had consequences. Republicans argue that Democrats applied double standards, protecting their own while punishing conservatives for less. When Omar faced backlash, Democrats called it racism and Islamophobia. But when Gosser or Green were targeted, they said it was accountability. That's the hypocrisy Chip Roy wanted to expose. The message is simple. If you set a rule, it applies to everyone. You can't demand fairness only when it benefits your side. This vote was about restoring balance in Congress.
And figure out, by the end of this Congress, next Congress, whoever's in charge, we figure out how we're going to play ball. going forward and set those rules. And I would say the same thing about open rules, closed rules, structured rules. And the ranking member could scoff. We've had X number of votes. We'll have continued debate about this stuff over time. There will be closed rules. There will be structured rules. There will be open rules. I'd like to have that debate. I'd like to have the considered judgment of the ranking member on that, and as I have debate on my side of the aisle. I'm just saying that we can figure out how to protect this institution and try to decide how to do things the right way. But in this instance, I'm going to be very open and honest about why I'm going to vote for this resolution. That's why. Again, recognizing the statements that the representative has made, I find to be highly problematic, extremely concerning, raising very serious questions from a foreign affairs perspective, as the ranking member has raised about statements made and how he feels about people being on certain committees over here.
Gentlemen,
I think we should, in my opinion, we should withdraw from that battle going forward and then let each manager pick their team. And I'll be glad to yield to the gentleman from Colorado.
And I would simply say I appreciate Mr. Roy's honesty. I mean, and again, kind of similar to what Mr. Massey said previously, and not to belabor the point, because I think you've already conceded this, but why not emulate the same resolution that was used in the past?
This moment marks a shift in how conservatives respond to political attacks. For years, they've taken the hits while trying to play fair. But now, leaders like Chip Roy are showing that Republicans are willing to fight back, using the same rules Democrats created. It's a sign that the balance of power in Congress is changing. Removing Omar wasn't just symbolic. It was a warning that accountability is coming for anyone, regardless of party, who disrespects the American people. In the end, this isn't just about one committee seat. It's about America's credibility and moral strength. Chip Roy's stand represents a growing movement that puts the nation first above politics, above identity, above excuses. Omar may be out of the Foreign Affairs Committee, but the real battle is for truth, fairness, and leadership. This moment sends a clear message. Conservatives are done playing defense. The fight for America's future has just begun, and it's a fight worth winning.
Calling this something that it is not in terms of the due process language. That's the part that I just didn't understand, because if it doesn't provide due process, why? So, as you said, it's partisan. It's not. And again, I appreciate the honesty on that front, and obviously the past presidents that you cited and the rest. But
I would. I don't want to interrupt.
No.
Yeah, I would just say, agreeing with the gentleman from Kentucky, putting something in the whereas clauses, outlining I think, genuine statement by the speaker on our side or whatever, saying that would be taken into consideration and viewed is something. It is something. It is not, I will be very clear, due process in the way we mean it in court. This is not a court. This is not due process in that sense. The question here is what we're going to do as members to afford each other the opportunity to speak, be heard. I'm much more in the favor of let each other speak and be heard, and go use your First Amendment rights to go say why you think that person said something crazy or disagreeable. I would prefer to be in that space. I have no problem with that language being in the whereas clauses. I'm not going to go trumpet it as some grand amount of due process. It's something. It's something in there, and I'd hang my hat on it and say, yeah, go argue the ethics and make the claim. But that's not what this is about. I mean, let's just be clear. Ryan plunks Ventura for a reason. And I yield back.
Gentlelady from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
After the vote, Chip Roy stepped in front of reporters and defended his decision with calm confidence. He said, this wasn't about scoring political points or pleasing his base. It was about protecting America's dignity. Roy argued that every time a representative minimizes national pain or insults allies, the world sees weakness. He reminded the press that America's image abroad depends on who speaks for it. In his words, if we can't respect our own tragedies, how can we expect others to respect us? That statement resonated with many Americans tired of leaders treating public service like a performance. Roy's message was simple. Representing the nation is a privilege that comes with honor, not entitlement. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar doubled down on her defense, claiming she was being punished for being outspoken. She said, Her removal was proof that Muslim women still face discrimination in high office. Her supporters quickly echoed that sentiment online, calling her a voice for the voiceless. But critics countered that this wasn't about faith, it was about professionalism. They pointed out that other Muslim lawmakers never faced such controversy because they didn't make divisive or inflammatory statements. The real issue, they argued, was not Omar's religion but her rhetoric. The debate once again highlighted how quickly accountability turns into accusations of bias in today's politics. As the news spread, the public reaction was sharply divided. Progressive groups condemned the move as political revenge, while conservatives hailed it as long overdue accountability. Yet, beyond the shouting, one question lingered. Has Congress lost its moral compass? The vote exposed a deeper problem. Both parties now use moral outrage as a weapon. Instead of fixing the system, they fight over who gets to be offended first. Chip Roy's speech served as a wake-up call to restore seriousness in leadership. He didn't celebrate Omar's downfall. He used it to remind America that actions have consequences, no matter who you are or what party you belong to. What made Roy's stance stand out was his tone, firm but never hateful. He wasn't there to score viral moments. He was speaking for citizens who feel ignored. He said that ordinary Americans are tired of watching leaders play victim while avoiding responsibility. Public service isn't a shield. He said it's a mirror. That phrase captured the heart of his message. Leadership reflects the values of those it represents. If those reflections turn ugly, it's the duty of Congress to correct them. Roy's calm conviction cut through the noise of partisanship and reminded everyone that true strength doesn't come from shouting. It comes from standing tall in truth. Ilhan Omar, however, continued to push her narrative of being targeted unfairly. She spoke emotionally about growing up in poverty, escaping conflict, and finding her place in America. Her story is undeniably powerful, and it has inspired many who see her as proof that the American dream is still alive. But Roy and his allies argued that inspiration shouldn't exempt anyone from accountability. Personal history may explain a person's perspective, but it cannot excuse their words. In Congress, every statement shapes how the world views America. And for Roy, that's a responsibility no one should take lightly, regardless of their background. The media played a major role in shaping how this story unfolded. Some outlets painted Omar as a victim of right-wing aggression, while others portrayed her as the symbol of misplaced activism. Lost in that chaos was the truth that both sides missed the mark. The issue wasn't about race or party, it was about conduct. When lawmakers become celebrities instead of servants, the people lose trust. Roy's firm but fair tone reminded everyone that Congress isn't a stage, it's a solemn duty. His message wasn't glamorous, but it carried weight because it spoke to something most Americans crave: honesty. Omar's removal also reignited the debate about double standards in Washington. Republicans asked why controversial comments from their side were punished instantly, while Democrats often escaped similar consequences. Roy used this moment to draw attention to that imbalance. If fairness doesn't apply equally, he said, it isn't fairness at all. That line summed up the frustration many Americans feel toward politics today. They're tired of selective outrage where accountability depends on party lines. For Roy, this wasn't just about Ilhan Omar. It was about rebuilding the foundation of fairness in a system that's forgotten what that word means. As tempers cooled, some analysts called this one of the most consequential moments of the congressional session. It wasn't just about one seat. It was a signal that the tone in Washington was shifting. Lawmakers were being reminded that their words once spoken don't vanish into thin air. They echo across the nation and the world. Royce's leadership in this moment showed that accountability can exist without cruelty. He didn't gloat or insult. He set a boundary. In a time when politics often rewards outrage over principle, that simple act of discipline felt like a breath of fresh air. Outside the Capitol, reactions from the public were intense. Some celebrated the decision, calling it a long-awaited move toward responsibility. Others protested, accusing Republicans of silencing dissenting voices. But no matter which side people were on, Everyone agreed on one thing. This event revealed how broken political dialogue has become. People no longer listen to understand, they listen to respond. Chip Roy's approach, though controversial, brought attention back to the idea that leadership must be earned through integrity. In a climate ruled by slogans and spin, his call for decency filtrare, and that's exactly why it stood out. By the end of the week, the dust began to settle, but the message remained. Ilhan Omar's removal wasn't just a political move, it was a cultural statement. It said that America expects more from its representatives than empty rhetoric or victim narratives. It said that identity cannot shield anyone from accountability. And it reminded both parties that leadership comes with consequences. Chip Roy may have sparked outrage, but he also sparked reflection. His insistence on fairness and respect revived a principle that many thought was gone from Washington. The debate may have ended, but the standard he set will echo long after the headlines fade.